Hi, everyone. We're glad you're here bright and early. It's a terribly busy time of the year, so I just ask for less than an hour of your time. It's kind of a heavy topic, but looking at your agenda, it's kind of one of the lighter topics. And so I'll keep it light, but it's important. And so we want to dive deep as much as we can in 55 minutes. I've given you two Mentimeter. We'll do two Mentimeter polls. You absolutely don't have to do them. You can just sit and listen and chill out as best you can, and multitask in your head if you need to. That's fine. But my main takeaway for us is I want you to be able to have a game plan for yourself. This isn't all on your back. You're going to have support on the topic of AI, and the next panel sounds really interesting. I'm going to stay for that and learn and listen because we're all in this together. And so it's not just on you, yet you're on your own journey to learn about AI. So the good news is wherever you're at, even if you're puzzled by it or if you're advanced, you're always going to gain knowledge. And so I really just want to encourage you on your own journey. And I see myself as a Sherpa. Has anyone heard of that method of teaching? That's my method because I've been teaching online since 2008. And I don't do hour-long videos. I do micro-learning, which is just short snippets kind of strung together, and that seems to hold students' attention better. So I'm a Sherpa. I'm just a guide on this treacherous mountain that we're heading up to. And so I'll just start out and say, and we will have a back channel on Mentimeter was my main point there. And I'm going to compile all of your responses, and it will be open for about 12 more days. So if you're like me and you have delayed thoughts while you're driving down the road, when you get home, feel free to also engage with that Mentimeter to have that conversation, and then I'll compile all of your responses and share them with Allison, and she'll distribute them to you all so you can see what each other is thinking. Okay, so we'll have chances to talk amongst ourselves as well. So AI is all around us, and it's online, it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, right? When you're on social media and you get those ads and they tell you things about yourself, like 50% of my ads say I should be a yoga teacher. I'm like, should I? They know us more than, they pretend to know more about us than we do. So it's a little scary, but it's important, and it's here, and we need to know how to use it for teaching, how to use it for our own productivity, and how to stop students from cheating. That's kind of the biggie. The biggie. And so I have these QR codes up here, and so I encourage you, I'll leave them up for a few minutes while I talk. So the one on the left is this slide deck. So if there's something you want to look at later, I have a lot of resources in here, and I don't want you to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, so come back later to it. If you want to look at the slides, you don't have to take a lot of notes. And then who's used Wakelet? Wakelet. Anybody? Okay, so it's a bookmarking tool where you can curate content for your students. And I use it to find good websites, good videos. Sometimes it's optional content for those, students who want more, but sometimes it's remediation content. We all have those students. And so Wakelet is a good tool for finding content. So I found some content, and I kind of put it in order of, if you don't have time, just look at the first few. And so if you pull up the Wakelet, the first link on there is a whole bunch of syllabus statements on AI, because I feel like that's the most pressing thing you need, is what is your policy? What are you going to say to your students? How will you help them know what your take on AI is? Maybe you don't know yet, so you need to borrow someone else's syllabus statement. That's okay. Tweak it a little. Find one and tweak it a little. Or just read through them and see what people are doing. I learn really well that way, seeing what other people are doing. So those are up there for y'all, and I believe they were also emailed out. So there's a couple ways to get them. So I'm here to kind of guide us through and take advantage of resources. Okay, so I'm a knowledge prepper. I have been preparing for the future of learning since about 2008, when they told me I'm teaching all online. And I was a deer in the headlights, and I didn't know what to do, so I started learning. And through our, our Center for Teaching and on my own and that kind of thing. I'm from Alaska, so I've always known, like, we're going to have these 6 months winters, and so I know that we need to prepare for the future, just like we had to prepare for winter in Alaska. So I'm a knowledge prepper. That's my elevator speech. I'm working on future pedagogies. I think we all have to be there right now. One more resource before we start. This is a short, easy to read for busy educators, short piece on AI and literacy. And a lot of what we all are doing as educators is reading and writing, involving reading and writing and thinking and learning. So this short piece is also in the Wakelet compilation that I shared with you all. And it just has a few ideas that you might think about. And I don't want to say it's pro-AI, it's AI with a bunch of caveats, like look out for this and look out for that, and here's how you might think about AI. And so it's just kind of food for thought. So that's kind of my last short resource for everyone. And then let's jump in. Okay, that roadmap that I talked about. I'm organizing this talk around these 3 questions. These are just things that have come up in my own thinking. And so if you have additional questions, I'd love to know them too. But these 3 questions are things to think about on our AI journey as we become more AI literate. So how are you staying current and aware of major AI trends and disruptions? How are you learning to work with AI, ChatGPT as one instance, but there's so many other AIs? And what are you trying or might try? And then kind of looking ahead into that unknown future, what are your future goals for using AI? We have some faculty at UTA using chatbots that send out nudge reminders to students. That's an AI. So let's just pause right here because I like to do turn and talk. So just talk amongst yourselves for a couple minutes about any of those questions. Let's just kind of see where we're at. So yeah, there's no right or wrong. Just kind of let's get our baseline thinking. So just talk for about 4 minutes. It's not long, but just share, just listen if you're not sure about anything yet. Okay, if you can hear me, just raise your hand again if you can hear me. Sorry, y'all. If you can hear me, raise your hand. Thank you so much. Okay. And thank everybody at your table. Let's kind of get some baseline going. If you heard something brilliant from your colleagues, write it down. Also, you can feel free to tag me on Twitter if you're so inclined, or X, sorry. If you're on Twitter/X, feel free to tag me too. And if you have a thought, and I'll reply to you there as well. I'm big into back channeling. So thank you so much for sharing your initial dialogue about this big topic. And the important thing about AI, as we know, is that it's every day is something new. So the conversation we probably all had in December when ChatGPT kind of reared its ugly head upon us, and we woke up became more aware maybe of the fact that AI is here, and it can be used in different ways for good or bad. That conversation in December is different than the conversation in March or April than now, and maybe in December it'll be completely different. It's just exponential change, right? And so I like this quote. I don't know, what do you think? The most amazing fact about AI is even though it's starting to feel impressive, a year from now we'll look back on the AI that exists today as quaint and antiquated, right? So I'm a Gen Xer and I've seen a lot of technology change, but this change is just extreme. So it's been around for decades. It's, we see it in analytics, which we use at UTA. We use data analytics to see if students are struggling. I don't know if you use those tools here, but we have heat maps where we can see who's not logging in or not doing things or maybe came in with a lower GPA, and it's controversial because we don't want to predetermine whether a student is going to succeed or fail, but it is data. So data analytics is a key component of AI. And then who uses editing tools online like Grammarly? I love it. I love it. I love Grammarly. I don't have the money to pay a professional editor, so I use Grammarly. It helps me with everything. So Grammarly is actually an AI. So when we think of the ethics of AI, we're already using these tools or maybe encouraging our students to use these tools. And then another tool that we use every day probably are chatbots, like when you're trying to talk to somebody about your purchase and you talk to a bot. And so bots are everywhere. And like I said, they can be used to tutor students. They're using them at UTA for assistance with admissions and things like that. So we're using chatbots quite a bit at UTA. So again, AI has been around a while, but with the large language models like ChatGPT, they're in our faces with teaching and learning, for better or for worse. Who's heard of the singularity? Singularity, yeah. Computer scientist Ray Kurzweil, he's a really interesting person, predicted a while ago that the rate of change with technology is exponential. So it's not linear, it's climbing pretty steeply, pretty fast. And to me, this is the reason why this topic matters, because the change is going to come at us pretty fast, and so we want to try to stay a step ahead of it. Even if we feel like we're just one step ahead of our students, that's okay. But maybe some of our students need our support and help with how to navigate AI. So what do you think of that? Change, agree, disagree? Any thoughts? Any thoughts? It's always something I keep in mind, and so if you're interested in it, it's hypothetical, it's theoretical, but I believe it. I think that we're seeing this. Like I said, I'm 49 years old. The rate of change in even my lifetime, from Pong and typewriters to here we are now, has been phenomenal. And so just keeping up is one of our main jobs. That's what I'm suggesting to you today, is just staying current is one of our new jobs as educators. Okay. So some of you have already entered some things into here. Let's take kind of a pause. Again, you can talk if you want. If you want to continue a bit of your dialogue, I want to give you about 5 minutes to enter some more thoughts, or type. See, that's my old school thinking. Type, your ideas about what are you thinking now about AI? Like this moment in time at 9:30 a.m. Maybe you'll think differently in an hour or by 2 p.m. today. So just go to the Mentimeter poll. If for some reason it's not working, just talk to people at your table. Continue that dialogue we just started a few minutes ago. What are you thinking now? And then I'm going to pull up the results. Okay. Hi, I'm back. Thank you, everyone. Go ahead and wrap up your thoughts. Wrap up, thank your people at your table, and we'll move forward. Thank you. Okay. So go ahead and wrap that up. I hate chopping off dialogue, but actually that's why I love Mentimeter. Has anyone used Mentimeter just on a meta level? Yeah, you can use the free version, and I like it because people can type in thoughts ahead of time, like you did, some of you did, or during. And then we already have 145 responses, so I'll compile these and you can read them later, because I just want to reply to every single one of these. They're really great. And the theme, there's many themes I'm seeing. I'm a qualitative researcher, so I'm like, ooh, themes. One of them is, where are we heading with preparing students for the workforce? I mean, there's lots of ethical considerations here, and there's like sci-fi is a reality considerations. We're in a sci-fi movie right now, but it's real. And so I just see a lot of themes. So I hope when you read these later, you can look for themes. But preparing students for an unknown workforce, to me, is a big issue. Like, what are we preparing them for, and how are we teaching them to use AI? So thank you so much for those. Give me 1 second to get back on here. So thanks for doing that, Mentimeter. I use it a lot in my teaching. So I'm going to give you some teaching ideas, and then some assessment ideas, and then we'll move on to maybe 1 or 2 more dialogue sessions. And so you may or may not know these. ideas, so bear with me if you know all these ideas, and just see it as affirmation for what you're already doing. So again, a few big ideas, and then I'm going to hit on those 3 questions that we started with and just give you some suggestions. These are just you might think about type of things. And so one big idea is just, again, your own exploration. So just get on ChatGPT and try to break it. See what you can do with it. Who's used it? Who's gotten on it? So make an account, most of you. So if you have not, find a buddy and make an account and just type stuff in. Type in your prompts, your assignments, and see what it might come up with. Because I'm finding anecdotally that's how people recognize cheating is they type their assignment in and see what it comes up with, and it's like this 8th grade level essay, and you kind of recognize the stiltedness of the language. So being aware is step 1 in exploration of, say, ChatGPT and how it hallucinates. So you've heard that term, so it makes stuff up and it's inaccurate and it's wrong. And so maybe it's 90% accurate, but it's wrong about a lot of things. Another tool, have you seen Futurepedia? So that is supposedly the biggest directory of AI tools that you can explore. And even if you don't look into everything on there, you can get that bird's eye view about AI. So Futurepedia is a good one. Okay, don't read this. But if you're interested, one of our goals is to become more AI literate. And this diagram explains what that means, sorry. What does it mean to be AI literate? And so I'll just point out a few. So like step 1 is recognizing AI, understanding the data behind it. I like number 6, imagining future AI. Number 10, the human role in AI. That's a big part of our job is what does it mean to be human as we interface with machines. Learning from data, number 12. Some of you do this a lot already if you're doing math, computer science, engineering. Let's see what else. And then number 16, probably the most important part, ethics. What does it mean to ethically use AI? So that's AI literacy, the 1-minute version, but you can explore that more on your own. So yeah, in a nutshell, step 1 is just explore AI. Talk to people, right? Talk to your colleagues. I like to learn on social media, so I follow different thought leaders in the area. Another big idea, you may have been talking about this, need to rethink assessment, and I saw some of this on the Mentimeter too. So here are a few suggestions. Using more process approaches instead of essays and that type of thing. So getting students to turn in iterations, who already does this? Like turn in and you want to keep them on track. If you're like me, you're like accountability, I want to see it. So initial ideas, outline, drafts, maybe group revision, peer revision. I think we're going to be leaning more heavily into the process of learning with students when possible. And then using metacognition. I think I was trying to listen to people, but I was challenged. But I think I heard somebody over here talking about getting students to be reflective and think about AI and how they're using it and that kind of thing. So getting students to explain, well, how did you do this assignment? Tell me about your process. So getting them to be metacognitive is another kind of AI approach. And then continuing to use rubric-based grading. That can help because you're identifying the different components of the assignment. And then importantly, be explicit about how AI can and cannot be used. So let me ask this again. Who has like a syllabus statement? Some of you, okay. If you're willing to share those with your colleagues so that they can take a look at that, because that's challenging. And then with assessment, we need our students to cite how they're doing, and it's not always clear how to use citation practices, and I'm going to suggest using AI mainly on the front end of their learning, developing initial ideas, generating some initial thoughts, and then it's important for you to stay as transparent as you can that you are aware of AI, even if you're bluffing a little bit. You have to, make a video if you teach online, or make a video anyway and say, I'm learning right along with you, but I'm aware of it. I don't want you to use it to cheat or deprive yourself of learning. Lay it out there. Even if that's not your personality, you're going to have to be really explicit and transparent. So what do you think about that? So I would come up with a philosophy or an approach, even if you just thought of it 5 minutes ago, and then you need to tell them, and tell them up front, what are your rules, quote unquote rules. Like I said, even if you have to borrow those rules from a colleague, that's okay. And then maybe we'll see more return of oral discussions and interactions. These are just suggestions. I'm not saying you have to do these things. Video-based discussions where you can see their faces and they're talking and interacting. Live chat, so that's why I love like the Mentimeter back channels. They're live chat. Hopefully they didn't use ChatGPT. But I've seen students where I think they're using it for discussion boards, and that's really discouraging. But as much as possible, ramping up that accountability, ramping up the process. I love this chart. It's in the slides. Who likes flow charts? I love flow charts. Yes, no, it like lays it out crystal clear. And I kind of agree with this chart. I found this on Facebook. That's why I lurk a lot on social media, because I get a lot of things. I learn a lot. So I'm in an AI for Educators group, and the citations are on here on this slide if you want to find this document. And so you can just use this in your class. Can it help me get started? Yes. Can it help me improve? It's a little bit of a gray area, but maybe. And can it do the whole assignment for me? No. You know, just laying it out. Can it help me with my research? And it says AI chatbots often hallucinate. So telling them what that means to hallucinate, and it kind of defines those terms for them. So we're all becoming AI literate together. You're laying out your quote unquote rules and policies in an infographic. Okay, so I'm kind of speeding through this, so bear with me with the pace. So another big idea, rethinking our pedagogy. So incorporating, talking about ChatGPT and AI into your pedagogy. And I have a few ideas. And somebody posted this on Mentimeter. So here's just a few teaching ideas. Someone said, how can I help students use ChatGPT to facilitate their own learning? So I wrote down a few ideas. They can ask ChatGPT to generate some practice questions to test their knowledge of a topic, with the understanding that it may not be totally accurate, but it's a good start. So it can be a personal tutor for them. It can also be used like a search engine. So tell me the 5 main points about topic X. So big ideas and key points. It can also be used to summarize an article. A lot of students struggle with reading comprehension. That's my background, literacy. And so if they can get help summarizing something they're reading, then that can help them with their comprehension before they read it. So summarizing, get tips for learning. How many of your students need some basic study skills, right? They're new to learning, maybe didn't get that in high school. So tips for learning. And again, personal tutor, it can be used for what we call just-in-time learning. Are you familiar with that concept? So they didn't understand a topic and they need to know the answer now, not a week later in your class. And so just-in-time learning is a great technique, and they can go find that answer using ChatGPT. And then I'm going to suggest as a digital muse. Have you heard of that idea? So digital muse is just getting started with your thinking about something. So you can ask it to generate maybe a list of ideas or help you brainstorm on a topic and just get jump started, especially when you're writing. So again, I'm going to encourage you to consider using it on your students' front end of learning or as a personal tutor. So those are just some ideas. You might also consider using it, having them use it for editing, so improving their writing. Again, think about Grammarly. And then for your own teaching, getting lesson ideas. Somebody said on Mentimeter they use it for standardized feedback, like what is some feedback I can give students on this? And we call that standardized feedback, where it's a little bit generic, but you can tweak it. So getting that standardized feedback might help you. How are we doing on time? Okay, so again, this idea of a digital muse is brainstorming, developing an outline, and in my case, I train teachers, so exploring lesson plan ideas. I have students even if they're grad students, they just have like baseline knowledge about lesson planning. So it helps them jumpstart their thinking. It's a catalyst. So that's how I intend to use AI, is helping them get started with an intimidating topic. And my students break out in a cold sweat when I say lesson planning. So this helps demystify it. They can get on ChatGPT and ask for ideas on how they might develop a lesson on X, Y, or Z. And then you can teach this to students. So let me just pause right here and talk to people at your table about anything I've mentioned about teaching and having your students engage with ChatGPT, or this idea of the digital muse. So just talk for a couple minutes. This idea might be new to you, but I like it. So talk a couple minutes. Okay, that was our last time to talk. So hi everyone, we'll wrap up now. If you can hear me, raise your hand. If you can hear me, raise your hand. All right, thank you. I know there's a lot of us. It's fabulous. Okay, last time to talk. Just a few more big ideas. So thanks to everyone for your dialogue. Okay, just a couple more ideas that relate to teaching and assessment, and then a couple of really big suggestions for looking ahead. We might wrap up a couple minutes early before your next AI panel, which I'll stay for too. I'm also going to read to you my own short AI policy, just again, food for thought. So AI can do so much. This is just one more idea. I don't know if you may hate it, but there's AI that can generate content and create your slides. I actually did this. It's slidesai.io. It's a safe Chrome extension, and it's kind of neat. So it made this PowerPoint and all the content in like a minute. And so this is just one more thing to explore. You might try it, or if you have students that are stuck, it's just an interesting consideration. So AI is doing so much right now. Again, you may hate this idea because you want your students to do their own work, but it's kind of interesting that you can get started with things. And again, that's one of my main takeaways for you, is AI can help us get started. A lot of students just can't, failure to launch, they don't get started. They're scared, worried, busy. And so if you can use AI to help them launch their projects, thinking, slides, then they can finish it on their own. But this is just one more example of how AI might be used to create content. Okay, so let's talk about the big topic, cheating. A lot of it is laying out your rules for students. The AI detection software tools are problematic. I don't know what you think about that, but sometimes they give false positives, or they'll take a piece of writing. I've put my own writing into these tools, and it said it was written by a machine, and I was so insulted. I'm like, I wrote that. I know I wrote that. This makes you doubt yourself. And so just use them with a huge grain of salt, if at all. We just removed them from our Center for Teaching website because they're just, at this stage, you wouldn't want to falsely accuse a student. So I don't have answers for detecting AI. I think you know it when you see it. So right now I'm going to say mitigation is one of your key tactics, and I'm excited to hear what they say on the panel. But starting at the college level or the university level is important, laying out a policy, and then having your department or class policy is the next layer, and then reiterating that message over and over can be one thing. And so again, detection tools are problematic. They need to know that you know, and then lay it out. So let me just read mine. It's not long, I promise. So here's mine, and let me know if you have any feedback later. Okay, please think, so it says artificial intelligence policy. Please think carefully and mindfully about the ethical uses of AI in your own learning process. So I want them to kind of own it. There are times during the course when I will specifically suggest that you try out AI tools such as ChatGPT to learn more about their uses for teaching. Outside of these specific instances, you are discouraged from using AI tools to create original content that will end up in your work products. However, you may use AI to generate initial ideas or to brainstorm very initial ideas, but you must disclose that you used it for that purpose. We will discuss this more throughout the course, so you let them know this is an ongoing conversation. And then I said, additionally, please read through Dr. Kim Brewer's tutorial about AI use, so I borrowed hers. Keep in mind, AI tools are emerging, new, and often inaccurate, e.g. containing their own hallucination or imaginary knowledge not grounded in facts or information that is accurate. Never use ChatGPT to create a discussion board post or a lesson plan, even if you later, quote, revise what was produced. I will investigate the suspected unethical use of ChatGPT, such as using it to create work products for the course in unauthorized ways. And at first I said I will investigate use of ChatGPT, but that was too vague because then they'll say, well, you told us to use it, and then it gets really messy and ugly. So I really worked hard on that last sentence. Discussion boards and reflections are expected to be entirely your own original thinking. Required tutorial to read and view. And then I borrowed my colleague's extensive video-based tutorial. She has 4 videos and it's really good. And so email me if you want that link or handout. Did you have a question? Yeah, and my email is Peggy S, P-E-G-G-Y-S @uta.edu. And you can just Google me and find my email. But I'm happy to send you my statement. You can copy and paste it. Because at this point, it's really hard to come up with your own stuff. Maybe next semester we can have these really thoughtful ones. But okay, so, and then just real quick, who uses their phone to make videos? I do, I'm a minimalist. So use your phone or whatever you have and maybe make a video policy and then, let them know you mean it. Let them know what your thoughts are. Like I said, even if you just cobbled them together 5 minutes before you make the video, and make it short and sweet, but say something about your stance on AI, good, bad, whatever you think about it. Let them know. And I think videos are great because I don't know if students read our stuff. And so a video is a great way to be redundant. Yeah, we're all laughing, it's true. Yeah, short and sweet, right? 1 minute or 5 1-minute videos, micro learning. Okay, we're gonna skip that one. So, okay, just real quick, I'm going to keep this brief. These are just the 3 questions and a few of my own ideas. These are sort of rhetorical. And then we have one last Mentimeter, which is, what are you thinking now? Okay, so how are you staying current and aware? Yeah, so just kind of, thinking about educating yourself. And again, it's not all on you. We're all in this together. Like I said, social media, carefully curated social media of people I know and trust is one of my main ways of learning, and I try to listen to webinars when I can, and just build that digital community, so I'm learning every day about AI and staying in dialogue with your discipline, because what you teach matters in terms of, like, writing teachers are really in the trenches with AI right now. I think that's how it's used most often, or writing intensive courses, history, liberal arts. Anybody who teaches writing is in the thick of it. Yeah, so if you have time, look on Futurepedia. They claim to be the largest AI tools directory. It's a little weird and scary, but it's really fascinating too. So Futurepedia is another way to learn. If you have time, has anyone done a MOOC? They have a lot of MOOCs about AI. These were kind of popular about 10 years ago, but they're free. They're like drive-by learning. You can just log in and get in on it and dig around. You don't have to do the homework. But these are just a few that I have found on edX, the future of work, and AI for everyone. So think about learning from those, or even telling your students about them. They're free. Like I said, social media is my place where I learn. I get, like that chart I showed you, the yes/no chart, I saw that on Facebook. So I'm in the AI classroom. Is anyone else on that one? So if you're on Facebook, I'm a lurker. I never comment, and it's pretty good. I learned through lurking, and they have webinars. There's a book. It's free on Kindle Unlimited. Wakelet. So this Wakelet, I like to learn through podcasts, and so I put a podcast on there about AI's all hype. That's one of them. And that kind of thing. I want to hear all the opinions on AI, not just good or bad. I want to hear all the opinions. And so I put a few on there. They're fast reads. They're credible sources. In summary, just keep exploring. It's a little overwhelming, but we need to stay current. And then we've talked about this one, how are you learning to work with AI? And just to sum up, what I've been doing is writing practice test questions. You have to revise them, but they're really good for helping students who need more rehearsal of knowledge. And so those practice test questions are optional, but they can help them. And I'm going to plan this semester on pointing them towards Grammarly and writing help. All students basically need writing help. And so, and using ChatGPT maybe as a quasi-tutor for them. And I use them to come up with discussion questions for my grad students. So critical thinking questions, and it actually did a good job. Has anyone done that? So I think the prompt was come up with or generate, 5 discussion questions for grad students taking a class about blah, blah. And then I put the topic, and it actually came up with some really good questions. So I recommend that. Also, try that out. Just a few. And then work on your policy statement. Keep the dialogue going. I'm chairing a group called the AI Working Group. We love committees in higher ed. But the AI Working Group is working on things like helping people write a policy statement. Okay, and then just real briefly, and then we'll wrap up. Again, I think this topic is going to be one of the biggest and most important topics. You read these headlines like jobs are going to be eliminated and that kind of thing. So I think in terms of staying current, we need to look at how AI will disrupt the future workforce. So we already know that kids we're training in kindergarten today are going to be doing jobs that are totally different than what we're preparing them for. We already know that. And with AI, it just gets even more disrupted. So this is my advanced kind of thing for you to think about is how AI will disrupt the future of what work is, right? What work is. And also how students may use AI in the workforce. So those are all things to think about. And there's a hashtag future of work if you're on Twitter, hashtag future of work. So. This is our last Mentimeter, and what we'll do is I'll give you 4 or 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll just look at the results and then wrap it up. So, and then you have a break too. So I know this was like drinking out of a fire hose topic, and so that's why I'm just a Sherpa pointing to a few things to think about. And I think you'll enjoy reading your colleagues' responses when I compile those and send them back to you to read. So what do you want to try and explore now? Maybe something you talked about or something in general with AI, maybe based on what I've said or your colleagues have said. So Menti, go to menti.com 1653-0166, and I'll show the results. So a couple minutes to kind of wrap up, and you can chat too. Couple minutes. All right, we're going to just take a couple minutes to do final thoughts. So hi, everyone. Go ahead and have a seat. If you're standing, have a seat. And if you look up here, just raise your hand one last time. All right. right. So big topic, the really big topic. Hopefully some ideas stood out. Let's just kind of take a look at what people said they might try. I'll just kind of slowly scroll through. So we have future of work implications, discussion questions, test questions, creating a tutor bot, create lecture slides. Explore, brainstorming ideas. Yeah, the practice exam questions is kind of an easy one, and just anecdotally, I tried it, and it was pretty good. Like the discussion questions and the exam questions that came up for me were really good. And I just gave it topics, and it generated some really excellent practice questions and discussion questions. So I would be more trusting of that for your own teaching. Go on vacation and let AI teach for me. I like that one. So in conclusion, I mean, this is just such a huge topic. I just wanted to jumpstart some of your thinking about it, give you a few ideas. Let's connect online. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I'm all over the internet, and you can also email me. And that's it. So thank you for your time and attention.